When you hear the word cartel, you might picture organized crime, illegal operations, and ruthless people willing to do anything to get what they want. You may have seen their names in the news or heard stories about some of the most infamous cartels in history.
But in this video, we're going to look beyond the headlines and examine how these organizations operate. I'm Jane. Let's get started.
Cartels don't appear out of nowhere overnight. Their rise is usually rooted in deep socioeconomic problems, weak institutions, corruption, and power vacuums left by governments. Far from the image of ordinary street gangs, many cartels function more like international criminal corporations, controlling billions of dollars, maintaining their own intelligence networks, and in some cases, even operating armed forces. Internally, these organizations are divided into specialized branches, much like legitimate corporations, each serving a specific purpose. We're going to examine cartels through three major parts of their operation: the hierarchy, the supply chain, and the methods they use to launder money. From the outside, cartel operations may look completely chaotic, but behind the scenes, they're often run through a rigid, highly disciplined, almost military-style corporate structure. The goal is simple: protect the organization from law enforcement while keeping a multi-billion-dollar illegal business running as smoothly as possible. Within a cartel, the roles are usually clearly defined. At the very top are the bosses, often referred to as El Patron or the Barons. These are the people who rarely pull the trigger themselves. Instead, they make strategic decisions, control bribery networks, establish trafficking routes, and oversee everything from production to distribution. The life of a cartel boss often follows two very different stages: unimaginable luxury during the rise to power, followed by extreme isolation when everything begins to collapse. At the height of their power, they have billions of dollars at their disposal, and they go to extraordinary lengths to hide it, protect it, and spend it. Some build enormous estates complete with private zoos, hidden tunnels, and private airstrips. Others commission custom-made weapons, vehicles, and equipment, gold-plated items, diamond-encrusted accessories, and personalized logos can become symbols of status within cartel culture. They often live surrounded by cash, because so much of the money can't be safely introduced into the legitimate financial system. Enormous amounts of it may be hidden inside walls, buried in underground storage areas, or abandoned in warehouses and remote properties, where it can eventually deteriorate. But that kind of luxury comes with a price. For these leaders, life can turn into a survival struggle measured in seconds. Communication becomes extremely difficult. Using a smartphone or going online can potentially expose their location or create a digital trail that intelligence agencies can follow. That's why some rely on couriers, disposable phones, or encrypted radios to communicate. They also know that even their closest bodyguards could eventually betray them, sell information to a rival organization, or cooperate with the government. As a result, they constantly change locations. Instead of staying in luxurious mansions, they may spend months hiding in isolated cabins or remote mountain compounds. Almost no major cartel boss in history has simply retired and peacefully died in bed. Their stories usually end with an assassination, a life sentence in prison, or death during an armed confrontation. Below the top leadership are regional commanders, some of the most critical figures within the organization. They may be responsible for a specific city, border crossing, or major port. Their job is to manage local bribery networks, maintain security, and keep the cartel's operations running within their territory. They oversee the collection and laundering of money generated in the region, manage local operating expenses, and make sure the remaining profits are moved up the chain. They may also maintain relationships with local police chiefs, mayors, judges, customs officials, and other government employees whose cooperation can be essential to the cartel's survival. From the outside, this life might look like a combination of wealth and power. In reality, it's a constant battle against paranoia and death. Regional commanders are expected to stay deeply involved in the field, and they can never afford to become comfortable. They may avoid sleeping in the same location for consecutive nights, constantly changing their routines and safe houses. The cartel business operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. A midnight warning about a police raid, a seized shipment, or an armed clash at the border can require a regional commander to respond immediately. Eventually, their story often ends with betrayal, imprisonment, or death in one of the many violent conflicts surrounding the cartel world. Then there are the gunmen and armed security forces responsible for protection and enforcement. They guard trafficking routes, laboratories, safe houses, and cities controlled by the cartel. They may be ordered to eliminate rival gang members, business owners who refuse to cooperate, journalists, or government officials who stand in the organization's way. These recruits can come from a variety of backgrounds, including former special operations personnel, young men recruited from impoverished neighborhoods, or foreign mercenaries. For many of them, the job comes with an extremely high risk of death. A gunman's career often lasts only a few years before they're killed, arrested, or forced to disappear. Hawks and lookouts make up the cartel's intelligence network. Their job is to monitor the movement of police, military forces, and outsiders, immediately reporting any activity back to the organization through radios or other communication devices. Some cities can have hundreds of lookouts spread throughout the streets. When a police convoy enters the city, each lookout along the route reports its position in sequence. This creates a real-time chain of information, allowing cartel leadership to know where law enforcement is at almost any given moment. These lookouts are often recruited from people who are unemployed, deeply impoverished, heavily indebted to the organization, or sometimes barely old enough to understand what they're getting involved in. Cartels exploit their poverty and desperation, paying them very little to spend long hours standing on street corners and watching for anything suspicious. To the organization, they're considered completely expendable pieces on the board. For cartels, one of the most important things is maintaining an uninterrupted supply chain. It all begins with production. The coca plant, the raw material used to produce cocaine, is primarily cultivated in Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia. Cartels often work with local farmers through arrangements that function somewhat like contract farming. Once the leaves are harvested, they're processed in crude laboratories, hidden deep in remote jungle regions before being transported by sea, air, or land. Moving tons of finished product to major consumer markets, particularly the United States and Europe, is one of the areas where cartels invest the most money and develop the most creative methods. In remote areas of Colombia and Central America, they have been known to operate hidden facilities capable of producing semi-submersible vessels. These vessels don't travel completely underwater, but because they ride extremely low in the water, they're difficult to detect by radar. Some can carry several tons of illegal cargo on a single trip. Aircraft departing from South America may fly extremely low over the ocean and remote jungle areas in an attempt to avoid radar detection before landing on clandestine airstrips in Mexico. By land, a significant portion of the product enters the United States hidden inside seemingly legitimate commercial shipments. Drugs can be concealed among frozen food, heavy industrial machinery, engine blocks, tanker trucks, and specially constructed compartments. But once the shipment crosses the border, it doesn't simply go straight to street dealers. The operation is often structured through a compartmentalized system designed to keep different parts of the organization separate. Major cities near the border can serve as distribution hubs, where shipments are temporarily stored in rented luxury homes, warehouses, or front businesses. The people responsible for transporting the shipment may never know the people storing it, and the people receiving it may never meet either group. Communication is handled through encrypted messaging platforms and disposable phones. Buyers may provide payment in advance, either in cash or through cryptocurrency, and then receive GPS coordinates along with instructions for locating a vehicle. They arrive at the designated location and retrieve the shipment from the trunk of an ordinary car sitting in a parking lot. In this system, face-to-face contact can be reduced to virtually zero. Once the money starts coming in, cartel financial operators use a three-stage process to introduce the cash into the legitimate economy. The first stage is placement. This is often the riskiest point in the entire process because physical cash generated by illegal activity is entering the financial system for the first time. Since banks are required to report suspiciously large cash deposits, criminal organizations may attempt to break the money into smaller amounts and move it through multiple accounts, sometimes disguising the deposits as legitimate income. The second stage is layering. The goal is to make the original source of the money nearly impossible to trace. Complex financial transactions are used to create layers between the cash and its criminal origins. Funds can move through shell companies, front businesses, investments, and accounts across multiple jurisdictions. By rapidly transferring money between different entities and across international borders, criminals attempt to make the financial trail so complicated that investigators struggle to follow it. The final stage is integration. At this point, the money is made to appear as legitimate wealth returning to the legal economy. A cartel leader may use it to purchase luxury hotels, finance major construction projects, invest in funds, or establish seemingly legitimate businesses. Once successfully integrated, the money can appear to be completely legal.
Today, we've taken a closer look at how these complex systems are built, how they operate, and how the different parts of their organization work together. I'll see you in another video. Thanks for listening.